post office facing a looming emergency in the summer without a federal bailout, the Trump administration appears keen on trying to end the post office completely, this time by trying to break it down by appointing a new postmaster general. So now this is Jake Johnson from Common Dreams. He reports this. The U.S. Post Office's Board of Governors, which is controlled by appointees of President Trump, announced late on Wednesday that it has unanimously selected a top Trump and GOP donor to serve as the Postmaster General. In a statement, the Board of Governors touted Luis DeJoy's experience as an accomplished business executive in North Carolina, because that's, of course, exactly who you want to have run the post office. I mean, have it run as less of a national service, which is supposed to be, and more of a business corporation. Now, the Washington Post reported that DeJoy, the head of the fundraising for the Republican National Convention in Charlotte, is set to become the first postmaster general in 2 decades who did not ever actually work at the post office, did not rise to the agency's ranks. This has been met by, of course, a lot of criticism from Democrats in office, including Representative Jerry Connolly, who slammed the selection of an executive and GOP donor with no experience. Now, look, had he been a GOP donor and executive that had worked his way through the post office, at least it would make more sense because he would be familiar with how the post office works, how it runs. That is not the case here. Connolly, he said, quote, President Trump rewards a partisan donor by installing him at the United States Postal Service. The Postal Service is in crisis and needs real leadership and someone with knowledge of the issues. This crony doesn't cut it. And right now, of course, the post office is struggling to weather the sharp decline in mail volume brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. It finds itself, of course, in especially dire straits as a result of the 2006 congressional mandate requiring it to fund its retirees' health benefits through 2056. That is a burden that no other company has to bear, or I should say no company has to bear. UPS, FedEx, they don't have to do that. The post office does, and so that is a huge financial drain on their resources. They could stay in the black without a bailout under normal circumstances. However, because of coronavirus, look, it's important to note the the post office does not receive federal money to begin with. So it's not federally funded. It is funded through products and services. That's where it gets its revenue. Now, because of coronavirus, you have those products and services that are in less demand. And so that is a gigantic hit to their finances. As many of you are pointing out, one way to do that is to, of course, go out to help the post office, is to go out and buy stamps. Now, like private companies, the post office has been hit hard by the lack of business. In fact, last month, Postmaster General Brennan, who was stepping down in the summer, told members of Congress that the U.S. Post Office needs an infusion of $75 billion to avert financial ruin within the next several months. House Democratic leaders are reportedly pushing for $25 billion in emergency funding for the Post Service in the next COVID-19 stimulus package that, of course, would be phase 4. One person standing in the way of that, of course, is Donald Trump, who threatens to block any package, any legislation that puts any money towards bailing out the post office. Now, the reason, of course, he hates the post office and calls it a joke is because that post office has a deal with Amazon. That deal, which helps the post office as well as Amazon, enrages the president because it helps Amazon, because it helps enrich Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon and the Washington Post, who, of course, criticizes him. The president's paper-thin skin threatens an American institution, as well as the November elections, which would have to be held amid COVID-19, mostly by mail. I mean, Trump's opposed to that idea, of course, at one point telling Fox News that if we had voting by mail, we would, quote, never have a Republican elected again. Of course. Now, the collapse of the post office would also help companies like UPS and FedEx and deprive people in rural America vital mail services. Mail services, of course, that UPS and FedEx wouldn't do because it's unaffordable. Mark Dimenstein, president of the 200,000 member strong American Postal Workers Union, said in a statement last month, as they were struggling, quote, "At a time when the country needs us now more than ever, Mnuchin and his Wall Street cronies are attempting to exploit the crisis to raise prices, demonize heroic postal workers, and cut services. Also, private delivery companies can profit." And one of the plans, of course, President Trump has been asking for the post office to do is to dramatically raise their rates, which, of course, would be paid for by us. Vanita Gupta, president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, also tweeted this on Wednesday, that it's hard not to be cynical about the motivations behind DeJoy's appointment. It's an ominous sign. The USPS is a public good. So many jobs, especially for people of color, and delivery of essential items depend on it, like medications, for example. And our democracy, vote by mail, the census amid COVID-19 depends on it. Look, it's not difficult to figure out what happens next. With DeJoy's appointment, the post office will attempt to privatize as much as constitutionally allowed. Perhaps even more so, because the president hasn't exactly been keen on following the law. Prices will likely rise for many Americans, an attempt to become more, quote unquote, fiscally solvent, allowing, of course, UPS and FedEx, since they do not have such a mandate, to be able to undercut them on price and take their business. Not only that, but of course, you also have the attack on unions to be able to bust the union in order to bring down prices or to bring down costs during this crisis. All of these decisions can be made at the top. Make no mistake, this is an attack on a very vital piece of America, another example of the tearing down of the institutions by the Trump administration and the Republicans that were meant to serve the people. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.